Let's go to the offensive line. Like, that's the word. We got text messages coming in here. They want to know what's the status? What is the word on the offensive line today as we sit here Wednesday? What's the update, Dave?
Well, I think we should probably go to Coach Mace right off the bat with the first thing that he told me today when it came to an update on the injury status of Philippe Gagnon.
So we got the results back, man. Unfortunately, he ended up tearing his bicep. So, it's not might not be season ending, which is good for him, good for us. But again, similar to Sean, it's just unfortunate. It didn't look like much, but that's just the way it went.
And just to elaborate on that, we did ask about McEwen and Sean McEwen's status, and again, the only update that they would provide was that it's going to be a while. So I don't think it's full-blown panic mode, but it obviously takes a big hit on your depth when you've got two offensive linemen that are veterans like that, Luke, that aren't going to be available for quite some time.
Again, I don't want to sugarcoat it, right? But this team did have success getting consistent offensive line play during the year despite a rotating door. But it is tremendously frustrating, especially if I'm Jeremy O'Day and Corey Mace. I'm really excited about what I got coming into camp in the trenches, right? What looked like a massive strength to this team, offensive line and defensive line, is still a strength, but not as big. Because again, Sean McEwen and Gagnon, those were two studs that you're now having to replace. And when you think about having to, I get the whole next man up mentality, and right, but like, your guys are your guys. Yeah. And what made this team so deep was the fact that they had the guys behind McEwen and behind Gagnon and behind Ferland and Yoshi, right, where you could sub in and replace. Now that's gone, right? Now you have to take two of the guys that were really providing some depth strength, start them, great opportunity for them, but now you're going to have to depend on, that brings two more guys up behind them that you weren't necessarily depending on, right? Or weren't in the plans immediately, right? So you go and get a guy like Zach Fry, you figure out where he fits, right? You figure out where Logan Ferland fits now that you have this new scenario. It's just not ideal, obviously, from where you were at the beginning of the camp to where you are now.
You're using your credits early in the game, or you're using your mulligan for golfers early in the game, right? Totally what I was thinking, Luke, as well. They do have depth, but now the depth is being inserted. Do we know? Right. Do we know? Is it is it a surgical tear? Is it a full tear? Is he going to need surgery? Does anyone know that? Because that's usually then a year, Luke. If I had a couple buddies that have torn biceps, and the surgery, you're looking at a year. Do we know?
It wasn't talked about, but as you can see from my biceps, does take some time to get back up. And no,
if I tear this bad boy, there's not enough surgeons in Canada
moving that smoker around the pool.
No, I think that I would assume that it's at least a 6-month deal, right? And that essentially is your whole season there. Yeah. Depending on how bad, right? I in 2007 I tore my tricep a bit, but it was out. But it was literally like a minor sort of tear that would have fixed itself. This is something that you got to do surgically. Yeah, you're looking at probably 3 to 6. I would assume. I'm not. Yeah. This is me going to 0 years of medical school and depending completely on ChatGPT for my analysis, but
but there was nothing that was made any further than that, and the fact that it's going to be a road to recovery, not season ending, but again, definitely long term. But what I thought was interesting today was the subtle change that was made. So Sean McEwen's out at center. We saw Zach Fry starting to take reps at center. And this isn't a slight on Zach. It's just an observation in the fact that the snaps weren't as consistent as they were with Sean McEwen. So today the team decided that they were going to go ahead and make a swap up. So they moved Logan Ferland from the right guard to center. They moved Zach Fry from center to left guard, where he started 8 games last year. And then they moved Jacob Brammer from left guard all the way to right guard. To me, that's a lot of moving pieces.
It's a lot of moving pieces, but it's a lot of moving pieces with guys that played a lot of football last year. So again, it goes to that whole thing Barney's talking about. Yeah, we're using a couple mulligans and the breakfast ball right off the bat, but at least we've got guys in there that play. Now, the concern is now what's after the reconfigured line. What's after the Logan Furlan to center, the Brammer moving guards. I think that the positive news here, and probably the more, if you look at the offensive line, the positive news is that none of the tackles have gotten hurt.
Yeah.
And that is sort of where the like, you can go from center to guard. You can go from one guard side to the other guard side. When you're like new right tackle, new left tackle, now you're talking about a whole different set of steps, right? The whole different sort of outlook on life when it comes to offensive line versus the defensive fronts that you're seeing. So hopefully, fingers crossed, the Riders have run into the major injury scenarios on their offensive line, and they've run into them early, hopefully.
Dave, I think did you have a chance to talk about the kind of moving on the offensive line with Coach Mace?
Yeah, the word that I posed was versatility, because Coach Mace talked to us yesterday about defense and the versatility that, for example, Jaden Dahlke has had moving from in the defensive backfield up into the linebacking core. So I asked him if that same versatility was true and evident when it comes to the offensive line.
Good depth and guys that can do multiple things. So again, kudos to Ed and Gene Mikowski's here with us at camp. Those boys are lucky. I don't think they know. So it's been awesome.
They might need Gene.
Well, and it's funny because when he said, I don't think they know, what he's meaning about is the offensive linemen don't know the legends that are working with them right now.
Man, dude, to be able to learn from Gene Mikowski, you're right. They don't know, but I'm guaranteeing you they found out over time, right? Like, what a privilege. That would be a massive opportunity for anybody to just sponge off one of the greatest, not just in this organization, one of the greatest in the Canadian Football League.
So I guess the question might be, and Luke, this is best to you. We are preparing for the first preseason game on Saturday. Would it be out of the realm of thinking that you play your entire number one offensive line, maybe not the entire game, but you definitely give them meaningful reps during the game?
In this new scenario, absolutely. You'd want your guys that you're projecting for day one, you want them to go this entire time, right? Or as long as possible. You might move a couple guys. Like, for instance, Hardrick might get a shutdown early. But you want as many of those guys, day one guys, playing as possible. And it goes well for continuity with whatever quarterback. But more importantly, guys, and I've said this before, having the best offensive line in for the exhibition season gives everybody a chance to be evaluated properly. It gives the quarterbacks time to throw to the receivers. It gives the receivers, right? It gives the coaches an idea of whether receivers actually know where their routes are supposed to be. Can they catch, right? Because the quarterback now has time to make throws and the plays get executed properly. You don't have a bunch of small rookie guys in there and defensive lines shooting the gap. You can't evaluate your talent if your quarterback, for instance, is being moved off his launch point immediately, right? You can't evaluate talent if there's just a 5-step drop on a 2nd and 7 and immediately there's guys in a quarterback's face, right? So it gives the team an opportunity to evaluate the skill positions and the run it even better. So that's one of the main reasons why you want your ones in there on the offensive line.
And that's a point.
Give them the best opportunity to be evaluated.
And that's probably a point that the casual fan doesn't really get, Luke, because they're like, why would you play him? Like, what are you doing? It's like, because it's a team game.
Because
we're not playing basketball.
I got to figure out if Dante Myers can catch. I got to figure out if Jack Cohn, right, can settle in a pocket, go through his reads. Right? I don't know if Jack Cohn has made any improvements if 7 out of 7 snaps, Jack Cohn snaps the ball and is automatically on the run, right? And I'm not saying that would happen with the guys that they have in the depths in Saskatchewan's offensive line now. What I'm saying is your best guys get up front, give everybody an opportunity to be evaluated fairly, right? Cone can now step into a throw and try to make it an accurate throw. And now we actually see somebody who we've suspected can catch a jump ball. Now we get to see him in that situation. And why? Because the quarterback had time to execute the motion.
Take me inside the meeting room for a second, Luke, because you mentioned Jamarcus Hardrick. He is coming off a long-term injury, right? And I'm sure he wants to get his timing back, get a feel, get some contact, so on and so forth. If you're a veteran, and again, you've got basically your position locked up as much as you can ever in football, who makes that decision for the number of reps you're going to get and what you need to be prepared for week 1 of the regular season?
It's a concentrated effort between the coaching staff and the coaches' meetings, right? When you look, you sit down and you say, okay, we got 4 quarters of football coming up. Here's what we know we want to see, right? It depends what you want to see.
Yeah.
Right. They might say, you know what, Yoshi, we need to see Yoshi if his body can, how his body reacts to an entire 4 quarters. They're not going to say that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we need to see if so-and-so can navigate a 2-minute drill. Right. So there'll be all sorts of situations that these coaches want to see out of certain guys or even themselves. I'd really like the opportunity to call a couple of these 2nd and 7+ situations with this receiving group over here. Can we do that? Right. So they'll figure out what they want to see and then they'll go from there. Right. So I think that looking or evaluating Jamarcus Hardrick is a priority in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 4th quarter? No, you know exactly what you're going to get from Hardrick, but the continuity piece is there. So out of all the vets, I would say that probably aren't going to play the whole game, I would look at quarterbacks, definitely. A couple of your receivers like Schaefer Baker and those guys, they won't play the whole game, but I don't think Jamarcus Hardrick will play the whole game either.
What's Jeremy O'Day doing right now, do you think, Luke? Like, again, for the casual fan, is he out there?
Lunch.
No, I know, eating chicken wings or something. Is he out there looking what's going to happen at NFL camps? Are they going back to their camps they had in Southern United States? Was there anybody there? Are they looking at other CFL teams that maybe?
The job doesn't stop for J.O., right? Like, it's a consistent evaluation, and look at the transaction they made releasing Ruby, right? The receiver who hadn't played in the last couple of days, right? They released him and they brought someone else in. For J.O., it's a matter of getting guys in the pipeline, right? Okay, we've got 2 guys down. They were on the offensive line, but are there any other guys that we couldn't get into camp because of numbers that we can now get into camp with these 2 vacancies? Or do we just need to flat out fill those vacancies with offensive linemen because we've lost 2 offensive linemen? The job's never done for J.O., right? And you're probably talking a ton to your assistant general manager. You're probably monitoring scouting situations and, like you said, camps in the NFL. Like, his job's never going to be done.
And other CFL teams as well. Maybe there is something that you got to give up something to get. Like, there's got to be that aspect as well, because not everybody's making a CFL roster that's that at all these camps.
Right. I always thought that, oh man, they lost so-and-so, so they're going to get picked up. They're going to go pick up so-and-so. I think that teams also want to validate the guys they have on their lists, right? So if a stud gets released in, for instance, Ottawa, and he just so happens to play center, right, that we know we're looking for now, I don't know. I feel like J.O. probably does this sort of laundry list in his head. Well, I really wanted to get a look at this guy. Or, we have a young center from Division II, Nevada State, Birmingham, right, that we've always wanted to look at. I always kind of think that there's that. We need to validate our guys that we've scouted, because that's who you're paying, right? You're paying money for the scouts that are working for you. Right. And I think that unless it's a drool-worthy situation in terms of a guy that's available, then you probably want to validate the guys you have.
Dave, did you talk to Coach Mace at all about the next few days here before Saturday?
Yeah, we were talking a little bit like just what we were discussing, right? So how do you approach ramping up towards that preseason game? And I did ask him, I just said, are you happy with where you're at?
We were really pleased with on paper what they look like, and then when you get them here, we realized that we got some pretty good depth and guys that can do multiple things. So again, kudos to Ed and Gene Mikowski's here with us at camp. Those boys are lucky. I don't think they know. So it's been awesome.
All right, fellas, we're going to get to some of these questions on the text line in hour 2, and then maybe we'll talk running backs in hour 2 as well.
Yeah.
And go down that. All right. Kick back, relax in your video game chairs there, whatever those are. And then we'll catch up in about 40 minutes.
Hey, is there something that's the opposite of the clutch performer that I could bring up for a second?
The opposite of the clutch performer?
The opposite of the clutch performer. So finding out that your buddy's smoker has arrived 6 weeks earlier than anticipated. What's worse than that is then he pulls out his phone and says, look, this is the first time. It was awesome. The ribs were opposite, not Nick's clutch performer right there.
That's the Michael Bishop performance.
Yeah. Well, better finding out, like Toby Keith said, Award. Wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then.
Yeah.
That's a good. I know you were wanted to bring that up yesterday. Okay, first off, we got some text coming in here, some questions, but let's go with running backs. How are things looking at the running back position, boys?
Well, for me, again, AJ Ouellette I think has looked terrific. He looks faster. He looks, I don't want to say heavier, but he looks like he's thicker with his pads, even though he isn't. He looks like a changed running back in my eyes. But then behind him is Mario Anderson and Trent Penix. And those two are really getting equal reps, along with Thomas Bertrand-Houdin, who really changed up his offseason regimen. He went ahead and he's lost some weight. He looks quicker. He's also gone ahead and really taken the deep dive into the playbook. He's been working out and learning from Logan Ferland, of all people. But the two of them have just gone ahead and befriended one another. They share smoothies in the morning at camp. And again, that running back room, talented.
Yeah, I think that Bertrand-Houdin has been one of the bright spots in camp. Yeah. I think, and anytime you're able to get a guy like that snaps in camp, meaningful snaps too, right? Like that's a great thing. And I played with a guy named Neil Hughes, who was cut from the same cloth, just a fantastic all-around football player. And that's what Bertrand-Houdin reminds me of, right? He was going to give you some great special teams as well. But as far as the Johnson and Penix conversation, I'll tell you, man, I think that's one of those battles that is going to come down to the wire, just sort of like a couple of those young DB battles we've seen over the last couple of years here in camp. I think that Penix and again, I was talking to Rob Vanstone today because it was freezing outside and the media, they were sort of just huddled up in the same area. And Vanstone brought up a good point. I was obviously, gushing over Penix. That's my guy. Your guy is number 29, Mario Anderson. And the thing he said about Anderson is Anderson's got some quicks to him, and he might have some return ability. And again, that's one of those conversations where you're like, hey, one of the things these coaches have to do is figure out where do guys have additional value if it's on the fence, right? And Anderson, let's see, does he get some special teams work? Does Penix get some special teams work? It's going to be a great sort of fight all the way down.
I thought for sure, Dave, that he was going to say, so I have Vanstone over for supper the other night in the smoker, and he thinks that okay, all seriousness here, and if you missed it in hour 1, doesn't look good for Philippe Gagnon on the offensive line. We got a bicep tear issue. Luke, first to you, like that position for the running backs, like what are the running backs thinking right now with what they're seeing on the offensive line? And then it goes back to our preseason game where they want to get some looks on receivers, on quarterbacks, probably on some running backs as well.
Yeah, exactly, right? And which goes back to that conversation about why you use your most experienced and your best offensive line combination in the exhibition season. Because now the gaps that Anderson and Penix are supposed to run into, they're actually open, right? So now it's not a guy getting the football, and as soon as he gets the football, he's running into the backside of an offensive lineman, right? Or a young offensive lineman's forgot his assignment, and the defensive end screaming off the edge with nothing but bad intentions, right? So I think that you're right. That is going to be one of those things where you just hope the opportunities that Penix and Anderson get, because I think that although Udon is having a great camp, I don't think that he's going to be a guy. If AJ Ouellette goes down, he's not going to start, right? He'll always be the guy, the second running back option in this offense, and that's still a very valuable and needed role. So that's nothing against him, because he's shown well. But again, I think that in order to evaluate a guy like Penix and a guy like Anderson the most, you want guys that understand where their running assignments are, and more importantly, if they do blitz, which is rare in the off season and in exhibition games, but if they do blitz, they want the guy that is supposed to come free and that Penix is supposed to block. They want him being the guy that comes free. They don't want two guys, right, putting the running back on an island, right? You want to be able to evaluate guys. So I think that's another reason why you'd want your starters in there for the majority of the game.
Dave, probably echo that as well. And then for you, you're there, you're interviewing a lot. I'm not sure if you interviewed any running backs today, but it's probably something that you could get a sense on. I don't want to say frustration, but just on a mood. It's like we're bringing these old linemen in, and now we got two down. I don't know if you could sense any of that, but that's got to be in the psyche of the running backs. There's no doubt about it.
Maybe in the psyche, but I don't think anybody's hanging their heads though either. The one thing that I'll bring up, and it was texted to me by Jeff, and Jeff said, okay, and we were going back and forth on this. So if you are managing a baseball team, right, your best hitters are probably 1, 2, or 3 in the order. But say they're not the greatest defenders, you're going to go ahead and hide them in the field somewhere, right? In the game of football, I don't think that you can necessarily hide anyone. But Jeff's question was, by moving Logan Ferland, and again, if you missed that news, Logan Ferland moved today from the right guard spot to the center spot. Are you losing anything that you get from the defending most outstanding offensive lineman in the West Division by moving him from guard to center? Do you lose anything?
I don't think you lose anything. Again, it's not like you're moving him from guard to center and then throwing a rookie from Queen's University in there to start, right? You're replacing him with Zach Fry and Jacob Brammer, two guys that played a lot of football last year. I think the concern is if you get beyond that, right? Because then you're into the Noah Zur type of body, which fortunately enough for Noah Zur, he got that call back. But again, he got the call back because he was available because he had gotten released. So you have to make sure that, and the other thing is too, running backs just want the ball. They want the rock. Yeah. They don't care who's in front of them. As a matter of fact, they're ready for the immediate cut if they have to, right? Because that's what a running back does. And that's part of the reason why you evaluate them, is because you identify the guys that have that sort of extra click or that extra sort of sixth sense about something breaking down in front of them that can make a nice cut early on to save a negative play and make it a positive one.
Before I let you go, I want to get to a couple of these questions from the Prairie Land Rentals text line. Daryl in Regina asked, how is linebacker Nick Weeb doing? Is he over his knee injury? Is he making an impact? And should he make the roster?
I think the other Weeb is having more of an impact, the receiver. I haven't seen Nick Weeb too much. That linebacker room is a deep one. Another one of those deep rooms, right? You got C.J. Revis. You've got guys like Jameer Thurman. On the other side, you've got A.J. Allen. You got the other A.J. You've got a couple Canadian. So I think Nick Weeb, haven't seen much of him. He's hurt it right now.
Well,
is he not?
Right now, Nick Weeb is on a pitch count. So he is not getting full reps right now because he's still coming back
to be
from
a
his
rookie
knee.
And being on a pitch count, that ain't good.
But he does play special teams, and he is taking a turn on the defensive side. So I know the team is very high on him.
Of course, he was a fantastic player before he got hurt, right? And I think that's what keeps a guy like Nick Weeb around, is the understanding of what we could actually get out of him once he gets over that injury.
And no knee brace, by the way.
which is a massive positive.
Wow. Another one, what is happening? This might be tough. I don't know if you've been able to watch a lot of this. What's happening in the return game? I like Mario Alfred, but is someone else who may be able to play another position standing out?
Dre McCray and Dante Myers are taking a lot of snaps, as is Daniel Weeb is a returner. Weeb has done some returning with the U of S Huskies, of course. McCray did a terrific job. He's got some amazing stats south of the border in college from returning the football. And we did see Dante Myers doing it last year at times before he got hurt. So they are all taking reps.
Yeah, I like McCray. I like McCray and Myers. And a guy like McCray, it's that old adage, right, guys? Whenever you're talking about professional football, one of the things you talk about is the fact that there's always somebody behind you that's younger and cheaper that the coaches want to eventually get. And I think that with a good showing on Saturday by McCray, do you start questioning whether Alford is the guy that you want to go forward, right? He's a little bit, he's obviously on the other side of his career, but he's also a little bit more expensive. Right. If you are able to find a guy that is a little bit of a jitterbug, has a lot fresher legs, and is going to be as explosive as you want that return game to be, it's probably an easy decision. But that's only if he takes advantage of the opportunity.
Okay, boys, quick turnaround here. We're going to bring you on with Darian after the top of the hour. Doubles with Luke and Dave. Another week. We're into preseason mode. Boys are on the bird to Winnipeg on Friday for the game on Saturday. Darian, you're probably keeping track here. Unfortunate news with Philippe Gagnon. Just another old lineman. Looks to be a long injury for the Riders.
Yeah, I was looking forward to Gags coming over and joining the Riders. I call him Gags because, he was with me my last year in Montreal. So I know him very well. I know what type of energy he brings. It's just sad that, for the second year in a row, the Riders are having these injuries up front. I saw where McEwen went down as well. So, it's just unfortunate. But, this puts J.O. to the test to see what he can do to have these guys, the backups, ready to go.
Darian, I wanted to ask you, so this week and today in particular, we saw some shuffling along the offensive line. Most notably, Logan Ferland has now moved to center. So obviously, Trevor Harris comes into the season thinking that Sean McEwen is going to be snapping him the ball. It changes to Zach Fry, and now a couple of days after that, it moves to Logan Ferland. How much does that mess you up as a quarterback?
Well, it doesn't really mess me up as a quarterback, but it really hurts the chemistry up front. The quarterback of the O-line is the center. He makes the calls. He gets guys pointed in the right direction. And, it's very important for his IQ to be super high and for him to be on point at all times. So if you're always, changing guys, having a different voice here today and another one here tomorrow, it could kind of mess up the chemistry up front. So I think the center position is one of those positions that you want to have as much stability as possible. So I think they're kind of shuffling guys right now to find out, who's going to be the guy moving forward.
So when it comes to snapping the ball, though, there's obviously a chemistry, or if you will, or a relationship there. How much work do you do with now Logan Ferland?
Well, I think that's for, Tommy Stevens and your short yardage guys who are going to be under center. They have to make sure that they're getting the right fit so that, on 2nd and 1, 2nd and short situations, they're ready to go. As far as, sitting in the shotgun and receiving the snap, it won't be that difficult. Trevor has played with a ton of different quarterbacks over his time. So whether it's a spiral or whether it's a J.O. floater coming back there, I'm sure he'll be fine.
Little shade. I picked that up. No shade. We were talking in hour one, and Luke brought up the point that you want to get these starters in, not so much maybe to look at them because you know what they can do. It's for the quarterbacks to have time so you can get a fair look on what some of these receivers can do. If it's a blitz or these guys are just basically falling over and the quarterback's always under pressure, you ain't going to be able to see Myers running the deep route or something you want to get there. So you got to have some sort of protection which it leads to having some of these vets in, Darian.
Yeah, I mean, this is the tough part, right? You want to try to keep guys as healthy as possible, but you want them to get those reps needed to get ready for the regular season. And as a quarterback, I hate to say this, but you want to hit the ground a time or two, right? You want to, make sure your shoulder muscles can and everything can brace yourself as you're falling. You need to get back into the shape, to hit the ground, so to speak. That's actually an art that people don't really know about. Hitting the ground is a skill, and it's something that if you don't do for a while, you can kind of lose it. So for Trevor, I think it's important that he goes out there, gets pushed down a little bit, and can kind of get the rhythm and feel for how his O-line is going to hold up against a pretty good defensive line.
Hey man, give us 2 priorities that you had when it came to your offense in the preseason. Like when you were out there, you knew that, for instance, you were going to go for 2 series and then you were going to sit down, right? But what were the priorities for you there in terms of what you wanted to see from an execution standpoint or play standpoint?
Well, first of all, I wanted to just make sure I'm seeing the defense. I mean, for the first 2 weeks of camp, you're just looking at your teammates. You're going against the same defensive schemes each and every day. So it's refreshing to get out there against another team and to be able to see if you can execute against them. So I want to look at another defense first and foremost. And then second of all, I just want to get that game timing down with my receivers. In practice, guys have on sweats, you have on extra layers of clothing, so they're not playing at game speed in practice. You try to emulate it as much as you can, but there's nothing like game speed. So you want to go out there, get a couple completions going, see if you can get some timing routes against game speed, and if you can have a good first possession or 2, then you're ready to go, and you can just sit out the rest of the game and get ready for the regular season 1.
Doubles, maybe to you first, and then Luke, you answer us. And I don't want to make this sound like not important, but in a preseason game, if you had to rank positions on like which ones aren't so much, we don't need the look as some of these other ones, like which ones would be at the bottom of the pile there, where you could say, we can let this guy sit this one out?
Well, first of all, I think receiver. I mean, these guys run so much in practice. Every day they're doing one-on-ones. You're getting tons of looks at the receivers and what they can do. So I don't think the game really changes much from that perspective. Now, your linebackers, your defensive linemen, guys who have to now tackle guys. You have to bring guys down to the ground, something that, coaches won't allow to happen at practice. This is where you get a chance to evaluate those guys, see if they're physical, see if everything, the attributes that you see on paper, see if it can match up in a game-like situation.
Luke, question to you. Would you echo that?
Yeah, I completely agree on the receivers. I think one of the most important groups, one Doubles didn't mention, are the DBs. You want to know that what they look like in practice versus, again, the receivers that they're seeing every day and knowing the plays. Can you play man, right? Are you going to get into your drops? Can you adjust to your, like Doubles is talking about, is referring to the game speed, right? I think that it doesn't take very long from a defensive lineman standpoint to get used to the game speed, because the guy's trying to hit you in your mouth right away. So you kind of have that attitude where like you have no choice. But I would agree. I really think that the receivers are a group that you can kind of tone down. I really want to see the DBs though, and I especially want to see the DBs in situations where they're having to tackle, because that is the one thing that you don't get any of in practice from a DB perspective. It's that tackle. You just sort of run by guys, tag them on the hips, and by the time the ball gets to the DB's level, if it's a running back, now the running back's completely shut down. They're going at gear 1. So, yeah, the most important group in my mind is those DBs.
Darian, I'm glad that you pointed it out, that it is a skill to falling down. That's almost why I was in the Speed Skating Hall of Fame, but that's a different story for a different day. But having said that, in all honesty, guys, when you've become established at your position in this league, right, The preseason training camp is about getting yourselves ready for the season and week number 1. So when you are looking at the preseason, and I'll start with Luke and go to doubles next, when you're looking at this preseason, how much of is it individualistic, right? In the fact that I've got to make sure that I'm ready to go and not have to worry about my teammates around me, or is it still always the ultimate team game?
No, it's definitely, well, at least from a defensive standpoint, you definitely have to understand the alignment, assignment, execution aspect of what you're about to go do. Coaches want to be able to trust the guys that they have out there. And a lot of the times, especially on the defensive side of the ball, it comes down to doing your job. On the defensive line, Gary Echeverry used to always say this to us in 2010, right? Like, water's not smart, right? But if you poke a hole in a bucket that's full of water, the water is just going to pour out of that hole. And as a defense, we always used to kind of look at it like that, right? Like the one time you're going to be out of position and out of your gap, that's the one time that the running back is going to bust you open for 15 yards, right? So now it's not only about doing your job, now you're impacting everybody else. So I think that from an individualized standpoint, you really sort of create the week 1. Now it's, hey, family on 3, blah, blah, blah. But I think that you still have to be or have a little bit of that hired gun mentality when you're in training camp.
Yeah, training camp is all about getting yourself ready to go. I mean, even as a veteran, you can't really focus on your position group. You can't be a teacher so much, especially if you're a guy that's not on your way out and you're still playing at a high level. You can't spend too much time teaching. You have to make sure you're ready to go individually. So I agree with Luke. I mean, especially offensively. Now at quarterback, that's more of your team-oriented position where you meet with the guys. You have to have everyone on the same page. But the other positions, you have to lock in on yourself. You make sure you do what you're supposed to do, because if you do what you're supposed to do and everyone else does the same thing, then that's how you have good, successful plays. So you have to focus on yourself initially.
Did you, Darian, in a preseason game ever have someone light you up, or like some Johnny Tryhard come at you too hard? And then Luke, to you, do you ever remember anybody maybe going a little too hard on a QB, or is that allowed in preseason in your mind?
There is no going too hard in preseason mode, man. Those guys are out there trying to kill the quarterback. That's how they're going to get on the team, right? Like, you got to
And it's very important, when your media guy passes out the rosters of the other team, you need to see who's playing in that preseason game. If they're loading up a whole bunch of rookies who are just have nothing to lose and going to be coming at you 1,000 miles per hour, then, as a quarterback, I'm looking to get rid of that ball and make sure I don't even risk anything. But if you're playing against the starters, a bunch of veteran guys, guys have an understanding. You just want to go out there, get your reps, make sure everyone is healthy going into week 1. There's everyone's on the same page as far as veterans in the preseason, but you got to watch out for those rookies if you're a starter, because some teams, they rest all starters and they go out there with a bunch of rookies. And if you're a veteran going out there against a bunch of rookies, you better watch out.
I don't know if Luke got that memo by the sounds of things.
No, I was speaking purely from a defensive standpoint, man. I don't think that there's any time where a defensive lineman would be like, nah, I'm going to take it easy on this, right? Or maybe I was just never in a situation where I felt comfortable with my personal position on the team. You know what I mean? Like, I always felt like I wanted to grind it out. You know what I mean?
So obviously this occurs, and Darian, you've told the story, and you're bang on, right? When you said about the fact that, if I had to go off script, I'd go off script because I just wanted to make sure that I stood out and I made my case for being on the team and proving what I could do, right? But obviously there's times and plays, whether it's on offense and say a receiver is supposed to run a curl and instead decides to stretch it into a post, that he's supposed to be there, instead he's going over there. Do you still throw him the ball, or do you just eat it in that scenario? And again, on defense too, Luke, right? There's going to be times where you should be going here, you should be challenging this gap. Do you go off what's happening around you, or again, is that all thrown out the window?
Now, I'm not sitting here telling guys to just run the complete wrong route, but the beauty of it is with 5 guys on the field, you always have guys on different levels. And what I mean is, when you're going out there, you have a short route and all of the defenders are low. it just makes no sense to try to force the ball into a short route with low defenders. So now I'm saying maybe you'll decide to read the other side of the field where you may have a route going further down the field. So I don't mean switch up what you need to do in the playbook. I'm just saying sometimes a read may cause for you to read one side of the field, but sometimes it just doesn't make sense to go there. And coaches may be throwing you a pop quiz just to see if you know not to throw the ball in certain looks, if you're ready enough or ready to take it to the next level and make another read.
Is that, I was going to say, is that a test?
I remember one year.
Sorry, Luke, go ahead.
Sorry, Barney. I remember one year we had, because you get an entire game script, right? For exhibition game 1 or exhibition game 2. And I remember I just wanted to be out there with guys that I trusted, right? Because if you were going to call a blitz or a stunt or a game, and I was going to go from B gap to C gap contain, I didn't want to look like an idiot, right? I wanted to be out there with a guy that knew that he was going from C gap to B gap, right? So like that was, and that's kind of the risk you run when you're playing with guys you don't necessarily trust. So I think that if there is one thing in terms of like guys getting on the same page, it's the communication that you want to have as a defense. Because again, when, like for instance, a lot of people say, oh, well, you know what? They sent the outside linebacker off the strong side, right? And that was just the end of it. Well, hold on a second. If we're sending the linebacker off the strong side, chances are we're going to have to tighten down on the defensive backs, but also the defensive line are going to have to know that they've got to go from one gap to a different gap, because if they don't, they're going to be unsound. So you always kind of wanted to know that the guy inside you or on the other side of you knew what the hell he was supposed to do, right? Because you were going to look bad if he didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, it probably injury as well, right? Like you got a guy out there, professional, things are moving fast. He doesn't know what he's doing. Like a guy could run into trouble physically as well. Darian, in a preseason game, would there be more of the offensive playbook scripted going in, or would the coaches want to test, like you talked about, the QBs to maybe audible out if he sees something, or how would that work for the QBs?
No, I think the game plan will be pretty vanilla. Just your basic plays. You may have 10 run plays, 10 pass plays that you can execute at a high level, especially for the starters. You just want to get out there and get the physical part down. For a group that's been together like this group, you're going on year 2. It's not much mentally you have to really focus on. It's about getting out there and physically, receivers dealing with. Everyone has to hit the ground, but now you have more guys tugging on your jersey a little bit in your routes. Like Luke mentioned, for DBs, now DBs have to tackle. There's no more tagging off. And DBs are the smaller guys on the field, right? So now you have to, make up your mind when you're running up against some of these running backs. It's a different mentality. So, going into this game, it's about the physical part, in my opinion, and making sure that your body is ready to go through a grueling season.
And you always hear guys saying they want to see guys playing fast. And that's the other benefit of having a shortened playbook, is that you get to see the guys and you get to evaluate the guys at their top speed. If they're not thinking and they're just going out there and they're playing, then you know what you know. If you go and give them the entire playbook and they're new to the league, right? Now they're playing a little bit slower than you'd want them to play. And you're really not evaluating them. And that also throws off the timing with the guys around them. So that's another reason. I know that we talk about in training camp, you can see the guys that aren't necessarily catching on. The exhibition game, though, is not one of those deals where you want to see who's not catching on and who's not absorbing the playbook. You want everybody out there playing fast so you can get the right evaluation.
Is there anything at all that isn't evaluated during this preseason game? Throw out a couple of scenarios. Number one, special teams, right? You are live special teams. One of the very few times I would suggest during training camp. And the other scenario is to find out who's been paying attention and actually learned the game. And
everything is being evaluated. I'll never forget when I played with Mark Trestman in Montreal. Tress did a walkthrough the day before. And we went over every protocol from having the national anthem to where he wanted people's toes to be on the white line during the national anthem, right? We go in to the first film session after that exhibition game. And you want to know the first thing, trust me, and he lost it. It wasn't just, he literally brought up, and he led the meeting off by this. How can we expect to trust guys to win a championship if we get this? And then he turned on the film, and you know what he pointed out? He pointed out the guys who had their toes over the line. That's what he was looking at. He looked at it all. He was like, can we trust this, guys? And he would put it on us. Can we trust that guy? If that guy's not listening to something simple like the national anthem, so everything's evaluated. Everything.
You're nodding, Darian. I bring this,
for sure. From the time, it doesn't matter what day of the week. From the time you walk out of that locker room and you put on either your practice jersey or your game jersey, you're being filmed. Everything is important. And like Luke said, the teams where we had the most success, it started from the national anthem. It started from where guys lined up. It started from guys taking their helmets off, holding your helmet in the right place, standing beside the guy that you stand beside every single week. You're not switching places. It's the little things like that a lot of people may not realize, but you as an athlete, you don't take these things for granted because it's all about routine. It's all about trust. And it's all about doing the little things right. And it starts from as soon as you walk out of that locker room.
On the weekend, Calgary had 33 players on their roster who had never played a game of Canadian football. So obviously there's a lot of different rules. My favorite preseason one was years ago when a young Calgary Stampeder quarterback, with time expiring on the clock, instead of taking a snap like you do in Canada, started walking off the field where his teammates had to go grab him and bring him back. I don't know if there's any grace period on that, but is there any oh my gosh, I got to remember that?
I think for returners, I've seen guys try to make a fair catch. I've seen guys not return missed field goals. I mean, I think, for the rules' sake, us as quarterbacks, we go through the rules all the time. We're always in last second, last minute situational football. You're always studying that. But I think it's essential for these guys who are used to making a fair catch on a punt return or not even thinking about returning a field goal. It's very important because we've seen games later in the season won and lost with some of these mistakes. So it's huge during the preseason to make sure you have the rules down pat.
I love it when there's always some gunner going down and he doesn't know the no yards rule thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then light up city. Here we go. Okay, we gotta scram. Darian, thanks so much for doing this again. This is great. Maybe we'll do it again Monday with the fellas. Always a pleasure. Dave and Luke, have a good night. Don't know what it all entails there, but take it all in. Last few days in the big city. Fellas, it's been a pleasure.
All right, boys.
Later, boys.
Doubles, all.
Yes, sir.